everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for novices, journeymen, wardens, and masters alike. I am Dan. My co-host is, of course, Josh.
Hello, everybody.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things problematical and metahumanical, because we're going to talk about some email questions and trolls.
Trolls.
Not the ones under the bridge, the ones you can play in Earthdawn. A whole lot more fun. But since we're going to be answering emails and some questions, if you have any of yours you'd like us to get to, because we do actually get to just about darn near all of them, email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com.
All right. So, one thing I do, before we get to the emails, one thing I want to shout out real quickly. Well, I guess two things. One, we mentioned it a couple of times already. Empty Thrones Kickstarter is still going. As of the release of this episode, there will be about a week left, 9 days roughly, on the Kickstarter. So if you have not gotten in on that, get in on that.
Because we've hit a stretch goal.
See the updates. We hit the $20,000 stretch goal over this past weekend as of our recording. We've got a couple of more still to go. So check that out.
Fair.
The other thing, also Kickstarter related, this is not FASA official. This is a buddy of mine, Optimistic Chad.
Yes.
O.C. Presley, a.k.a. Scratch from the Legends of Earthdawn Actual Play podcast. He and his new company, Fraggin' Unicorn Games, just as of our recording today, launched their Kickstarter for their first product, Gangs of the Undercity, which is a miniatures tabletop game.
Oh, wow.
Cyberpunk, whatnot kind of thing going on. It funded it hit the initial goal in an hour and a half. They've already hit a bunch of their stretch goals. They've got a bunch of stretch goals because it's a minis game. And so there are different gangs and they've got stretch goals for specific miniatures and all kinds of other stuff. I have not had a chance to sit down and decide which tier I'm going to back it at, but he's a really good guy. He wrote for the Questor's book, or he wrote for Mystic Paths. I'm sorry. He wrote the Fire Eater thing for Mystic Paths. Rusty Zimmerman is working with him by doing some fiction and developed one of the gangs. That's one of the stretch goals. He's involved with it as well. He's written a bunch of stuff and will be doing fiction. And so go check it out. Again, Gangs of the Undercity. I will have a link in the show notes. But go and search Kickstarter. They are because of it's a first campaign and they're drawing significant numbers right off the bat. It's kind of drawing some attention from places like KickTrack and things like that. So it's really cool. You should check it out, because he's been kind of pushing it, and I really want to see this succeed hugely for him.
And we'll give him a shout out. Absolutely. I have a non-FASA related shout out as well. I ordered, due to the coronavirus, they had halted production on their dice for a while, and so they were offering up anybody to buy a coronavirus face shield that they would 3D print. And I bought one, but the headband broke. So I emailed them back and said, I just want to buy a headband. This is the only part I need. And I got an email back saying, we'll just toss one in the box. We got a couple left in stock. So I got a new face shield and 2 headbands in a box for free. So
cool.
I will absolutely, when I get a job back, go be buying some dice at Artisan Dice. By all means, please do so. If you have the cash to go buy a set of dice, do it. They were fantastic people. Customer service is wonderful. When I have a job again, I'll go buy some dice there. But until then, I'm giving them a shout out. They were fantastic in the coronavirus thing. My wife loves her face shield. She has to use it at work. So we now have 2 for the price of 1. I don't care. Go patron them a little bit. So that's my shout out.
All right, great. Emails.
Yeah, onto the emails. Okay.
We're sharing the love. Also, it will be releasing a little bit after this episode drops. I did an interview the other night with Seize the GM, a podcast. Oh, nice. One of the hosts of which is Jules from the Legends of Earthdawn podcast.
A little incestuous here.
It's all... they had me on the show to talk about Empty Thrones, to talk about Iopos, to talk about various things. The 2 hosts, Jules is pretty much kind of new to Earthdawn, and the other guy, Joel, is a much more seasoned Earthdawn veteran. And it was a great show to be on. And keep an eye out for that. I will be retweeting it on my social media and things like that when it's available.
Totally. And we'll get to those at the end of the episode, where you can find Josh in myriad forms.
Okay,
so,
emails.
Until then, emails. We have 4 today. First one's from Chris. Hello. I've only just started listening to your podcast, and I am enjoying it so far. Thank you for your focusing on the different disciplines in your episodes. He just started with Warrior. His favorite is the Illusionist, but he's currently playing a 10th Circle Swordmaster, which has been a lot of fun for him. Questions are plentiful, but I'll lace them in. I was wondering what you guys thought about characters taking multiple disciplines. Hold that thought, Josh. In my game, there are 6 of us. Recently, our weaponsmith took a few circles as a wizard, so now I am the only person playing a single disciplined character. I'm assuming out of 5. The GM is leaning a little bit on me to take another discipline as well, leaning toward Air Sailor. I don't feel it necessarily fits my character, but I'm not sure if this puts me at a disadvantage compared to my multidisciplined peers.
So first off, if he really likes Illusionists, we talked about them just last week.
Exactly.
And
go find
if
that
he's
one.
playing a Swordmaster, we're talking about them next week. So nice timing.
You are smack dab in the middle. You are the Oreo cream filling of these episodes.
So I think I've mentioned this in the past. The way that advancement works, I think I talked about this in the advancement episode.
Yes.
The way that advancement works, and because of the escalating costs of increasing your talents as you advance through your circles of your discipline, means that there comes a certain point where it can feel a lot more advantageous to pick up a second discipline and spend the points that you would take to, say, raise a 1 talent from rank 7 to 8 to raise a new discipline from brand new circle 1 to like circle 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Just because of the way the costs work, that is kind of
your points are better spent getting more stuff that way.
Yeah. So there are 2 aspects of this. First off, I don't think you are necessarily at a disadvantage if you stick with a single discipline. I don't, basically what you might miss out on is having a wider variety of talents and abilities to choose from compared to other people. And that, especially with smaller groups, might be why some people, an additional reason why some people are incentivized to pick up a second discipline is to start picking up some additional talents and abilities that allow you to be able to engage in different ways with more potential problems and obstacles. But what ends up happening, especially when you're looking at 4th edition, is because of the increasing tier costs of your second and subsequent disciplines, it is no longer quite as... I mean, it's still going to happen just because of without completely overhauling the legend point advancement system and the costs involved. There's always going to be that kind of, it's a lot easier for me to bring something up to rank 4 than it is to bring one thing up to rank 8. But the changes where everything is 1 tier higher in your second discipline kind of balances that a little bit. So what you end up doing, and this is a similar thing that happens with humans and who try and focus on versatility, is that you do end up with a little bit of a broader selection of abilities and options that you can choose from, with the disadvantage of those options tend not to be quite as highly ranked as your primary abilities. So I don't think ultimately that you are truly disadvantaged by not picking up a second discipline. So there's that aspect of it. The other part of it is second discipline, how that is portrayed in the setting. And this is one of the places where the setting info, the lore, does not quite match the mechanics so well. And that is that it's kind of presented, the idea of an adept and a discipline being something that is a way of life, that it is a philosophy, it is a mystical way of thinking that allows you to unlock these magical talents. And that it is presented as something that not everyone is able to do in the first place. And also, it is even, as hard as it is to do in the first place, it is even harder to do that for another, to pick up a second discipline and to have to juggle those 2 different discipline philosophies, those 2 different mindsets. Depending on the disciplines that you follow and how you approach them, that could be easier or more difficult. It's probably not too difficult for a Swordmaster troubadour to kind of juggle those, because they are both kind of highly presentation focused, and the Swordmaster has a little bit of combat, but it is about the flair and some social and performance, and those kind of things can kind of gel reasonably well together. You would have a very different kind of situation perhaps with, say, a weaponsmith and an illusionist, right? Where the weaponsmith tends to be a little bit more practical and grounded and real world, whereas the illusionist, as we discussed the other week, tends to be a little bit more
esoteric,
like transient and flighty and esoteric. I mean, they both still have kind of like social themes involved with them that kind of works well. But so depending on your approach and things like that. So the fiction often talks about the difficulty of having a multidiscipline character, but the ease and the numbers involved in picking it up, that basically the enforcement of how hard it is to be a second discipline is something that pretty much falls in the lap of the game master.
Because Swordmaster...
I mean, we've talked about in our discipline...
Because Swordmaster Air Sailor is not too hard to reconcile, but if you don't see that going for your character, you know your character better than anybody else. If that's not a path you feel like walking down, secondarily, don't do it. You know, as much as they're trying to shoehorn you in the direction.
I would say, you know, don't feel forced to do that if it's something that you want to explore, if it's something that you want to pick up, because once you're into those warden tiers, you know, 9, 10, 11, you know, advancement slows down when you hit journeyman. Advancement slows down even more when you get into warden. And if it feels like you are missing out because you aren't picking up new abilities or increasing your new abilities to the same rate that your companions are, it may be that your GM doesn't want you to feel like you are missing out compared to the other members of the group. I don't think numerically you're necessarily at a disadvantage.
No, because you should be getting the higher legend awards for your session awards and things like that. So it should be helping your advancement continue on a regular path.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not sure why the GM might be pushing that, but, you know, it's something, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I don't think you're missing out. I think that there is a little bit of a disconnect between the fiction and the mechanics in terms of how easy it is numerically, mechanically, compared to how easy it should be, which is to say not very. There have been times where the idea of, well, is multidisciplining something that even should be allowed? And I mean, as far as the game development goes, that genie was let out of the bottle
long ago.
It does present some design obstacles, just in terms of any time that we are developing new talents and new whatever, that we need to kind of think about how it might interact with other existing mechanics, which is part of the reason why Paths was such a wonderful mechanical breakthrough, is that it allows us to gate abilities in a way that doesn't necessarily open them up to everybody right out of the bat. I don't know. I feel like we're starting to ramble now, and I think we've addressed his question there as far as multidisciplines go.
I have 2 points to make for him. First off is, if you don't want a second discipline, I applaud you, because just so you can use this with your Game Master, focus, and since you're focusing on your Swordmaster, focus is where power comes from. And so if everyone else is scattering their power on a second discipline, you don't necessarily have to. Keep your focus where you like it. And if you don't want a second discipline, maybe try being a quester for one of the passions instead. I mean, that's another alternative.
Sure. Or look into Paths.
And you can make yourself unique more that way.
Yeah.
Because if everyone else has a second discipline, you can be a quester or a path, and that's a whole different thing for you to explore.
You know, I mean, those sort of venture into a similar territory as a second discipline, but it might be something to it might be something to look into as a possibility that allows you to gain access to a whole bunch of neat tricks and abilities that otherwise would not be possible.
Fair. We will have some tips for you on playing a high-level Swordmaster, probably in the Swordmaster episode, so stay tuned for that one in a week or two.
Yes, well, we'll talk about the Swordmaster stuff. I don't know how much into the High Circle stuff we will get.
No, we have a secondary episode for High Circle stuff for everybody later on, so it'll be a while, but we otherwise...
we'll get there.
Yeah. Focus is where the power
Any other
comes
questions from
nope, that's all from Chris.
Here?
So, thank you, Chris. Okay. Please let us know how it goes and what you decide. If you decide anything later on, we'd love to hear about it. Next up, from Shannon. I just listened to episode 13, Timeline Part 4. You're a little behind, Shannon. We're 20 episodes ahead of you.
That's okay.
I'm just teasing.
That's fine.
And there was a lot of talk about the new status quo with the meta plot. One of my favorite aspects of the Earthdawn settings is the horrors that remain, and it seems in many respects the meta plot is leaving behind some of these premises, like in Lost Cares, remaining horrors and other classic Earthdawn tropes in favor of a more factionalized political environment. She was wondering if you have any thoughts about that, or are they missing something completely?
No, I would say that it is a fairly accurate assessment of the storyline development of Barsave, going through first edition, Prelude to War, the books that were developed, and things like that.
Yes.
You know, and that was picked up and kind of developed even further as the game went on, and one of the things that we're working on with Empty Thrones, which is largely more like political developments and stuff like that. I do recognize that, you know, there have been some aspects, they're not as majorly meta-plot focused, but there have been some adventure stuff released connected to the horrors. Blades, for example, actually does a kind of a good job of tying some of the political stuff with Carafod in with a horror story.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, there has not been, you know, it's a fair assessment to say that. One of the things that we have been kind of starting to talk about in development meetings is, okay, Empty Thrones is going, here's the next big event and the few things that are kind of going to shake things up. What are we going to be looking towards next? What are we going to be focusing on? What are the next ideas that we're going to start building on over the course of the next few source books and go from there?
Mm-hmm.
Horrors and kind of getting back in and maybe bringing in some stuff with regards to the horrors is something that is on my mind. And I'm hoping when I get to focus on it, that will be one of the sub-themes running in the Yorupa book.
Makes sense to me. I figure it's just time. Because over the last 3 iterations of Earthdawn, we've already had the Secret Societies of Barsave book. We've had the Scourge Unending continuation of horrors. We've had the Horrors book, the Dragons book. Just haven't advanced the cities, the meta plot on the rulers and the movers and shakers. So it's time to get to those. And to your point, circling back around to the regular things that people are expecting or wanting is forthcoming.
Yeah.
So it's just, they're in the pipeline.
And I mean, to a certain extent, the Legends of Earthdawn, the Legends of Barsave adventure series that we've been releasing, that Carl and Kyle and Michael have been doing and releasing, that is, while there is some political stuff involved there, it's a campaign, it's a meta plot story in a sense that is taking place in and around Parlength, which if there were a horror capital of Barsave, that is certainly it. And there is certainly some aspects of that plot that tie into the horrors and things like that. Some of those details have yet to be released in official things, but that is another place where that is being explored.
So, thank you, Shannon. Yeah, love that.
Good question.
Absolutely.
Good observation.
Love to see that. Next, we have Raphael. Hi, Dan. Hi, Josh. Thank you for making this podcast. My game master and I always have a great time listening to the two of you, deepening knowledge and gaining new insights. I'm surprised we actually have knowledge and insights to offer, but I appreciate you actually. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We have stumbled upon the 7th Circle Shaman spell, Beast Form. The description says that it allows the caster to transform into any non-magical creature. But what defines a creature as non-magical? Is it a distinction between regular and awakened animals, or has it something to do with the creature being suited as an animal companion? We've asked on Discord, but the folks there weren't so sure either. Normally we would just house rule something, but giving the player unintended options for the spell could potentially break its balance. So they're asking for developer insight. Have a nice day. So this one's all Josh.
Yeah. I did not write that spell. I think it's a fine spell. I don't know exactly what was considered the definition behind that. And sometimes the Discord chat moves very quickly, and I don't recall seeing that question come across at any point, especially if it was one that happened in what is the early morning hours for me. There is a contingent of European fans on the Discord that will frequently have, 100 and 150 post-long discussions at local time, 2:30, 3 a.m., and I'll wake up and see that and go, yeah, I'm not going to get caught up on that. And so it's possible in one of those that it might have gone by and I just, missed it. It's a good question. My gut instinct, and this is just kind of like hearing the question and thinking about it a little bit, I would say that a non-magical creature would be one that does not have any kind of clearly magical powers. Like, for example, Lightning Lizard has the twin bolts and the lightning crackling ability.
Clearly.
I would consider that to be a magical creature. The Gatehound, which has the magic dampening ability, that I would probably consider to be a magical creature.
Yeah. The Manticore that can cast spells.
Yeah, well, the Manticore is griffins. They can fly, but it's, they're a fantastic creature, but I don't know that a standard griffin has any kind of real magical ability that I would consider. I don't have I saw you grabbed your book.
Yep.
But I would, basically I would just probably just look at it and say, is there a power, like a creature power that it has that makes me go, yep, that's magical. It feels like one of those things that's I don't know that I could define it, but I know it when I see it.
I would go along with, if any part of its body is worth loot. Maybe, because, sometimes tail feathers, sometimes like the Manticore's tail, sometimes like the eyes of the Lightning Lizard. Those are magical and used in alchemical means. Yeah,
so but I would be... I'm not sure... that's one of... This feels like one of those things where, gosh, let me go through the entire list. I would say that animal companion status is probably not the defining trait, because I know that there are animal companions or creatures that are able to be animal companions that I would consider to be magical. You've got the book there. Look up Lightning Lizard.
Yeah. Because I was on Griffin. Their powers are dive, enhanced sense, hearing and sight, willful, and swooping attack.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider any of those to be magical. So I would probably allow a Griffin to be a form that could be changed into.
Yeah, a jungle Griffin, however, has frighten.
Yeah,
and is willful and has entrancement. So a jungle Griffin,
the jungle Griffin I would say probably would consider magical. A standard Griffin probably would not be.
Yeah, Lightning Lizard, crackling armor.
Well, but the thing, check the very end of the Lightning Lizard description and see if it's suitable as an animal companion.
It probably is not, actually.
It's at the end of the flavor text before you get to the stat block.
All right. It does. They are suitable as animal companions.
Yeah, see, so saying that it's an animal companion, that is an easy to determine factor, because it should be mentioned for any creature that can be specifically called out. But a Lightning Lizard, because of its crackling armor and twin eyebolt lightning shooting ability, I would say that's a magical creature.
A Mulgrim is a suitable animal companion, but it has enrage and pounce and provoke as special maneuvers, and it has great leap and resist pain and willful as powers. It's just...
Yeah, but, again, I think that's one of those things that, I think part of the context of this is, well, what is the most powerful creature that the shaman could turn into using this spell? Dragon's obviously out.
Yep.
Would a wyvern be considered a magical creature? What about a thunder beast or a dire or a behemoth?
Griffin. Yeah.
Well, a Brithin probably would be considered magical.
Yep.
But
it's just a bear with horns. So,
well, I think they might have it's a tough call. I don't have a firm answer. My gut would be, well, look at the creature, and I wouldn't consider the willful trait to be a magical ability. That's something that is available to some things that are clearly non-magical creatures.
Agreed.
Things like pounce, things like great leap. Great leap is just the ability to jump, right? That's not inherently magical.
It's not huge. Yeah, frogs have that.
Enhanced senses, those aren't inherently magical, because that just is a way to represent that with this sense the creature has, a dog has enhanced sense smell, right? Yeah, it's just obviously that would be something you could turn into. So, it's one of those things. I don't have a firm answer, but my answer would be, well, look at the creature. This is something I think that would need to be negotiated out between the player and the GM, without going through an exhaustive list of every creature and saying what I think, yes or no.
Exactly. Yeah. Not one at a time.
We've only got so much time. So yeah, I will poke Morgan, since he wrote that spell, and see if there was something that he actually had in mind for that, or if this was one of those things that we put that as the restriction and leave it up to individual tables to define based on their own feel for
what is magical
balance and power and things like that. Like, a Thunder Beast does not have any magical abilities.
Ta-da.
Right? One of the things that you could perhaps look at is it's an X circle spell. He mentions that it's a 5th circle?
7th
circle spell. So yeah, those should be reasonably powerful to begin with, and maybe have the cutoff and say you can turn into anything that is pegged as a challenge rating circle 7 or lower.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at some things that might be considered non-magical but are more powerful, like a behemoth or, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe look at that. But yeah, I don't know.
No, fair. We didn't give you a distinct answer, but we gave you a couple of options to play around with to navigate your own way to an answer.
Yeah.
How's that? So hopefully,
it's
Raphael, that helps. Or you know what? We'd love to hear what is decided upon. So let us know, and then we'll tell you if they're right or wrong.
Yeah, I will sort of put a pin on that, and we'll come back to that another time.
Yeah, we'll see if there's some errata we can come up with for a different podcast. So last one we have is Brandon. It's a very long email, but we can get to it pretty quickly. It says, howdy, Dan and Josh. First, I would like to thank you for both taking time from your personal lives to do the podcast. I listen as soon as I'm able every week, and it gives me something to look forward to listening to at work once a week. Since this last episode brought up the first criticisms, I would like to interject with my own. Dan, in the newest episode, has said that he likens the spending pool of legend points to a trip computer in a car. How do his players ever get past novice ranks? My trip odometer reaches 999 and then sadly turns over to 0. No wonder his scout only increased dexterity by 1 point. He had needed 2. He would never gather enough legend. Fair enough.
He's making fun of you.
Make fun of me. I'm here to be made fun of. Seriously, though, I have no criticisms of the show. To respond to the revelation that Josh admitted that he was questioned about his lack of preparation, I feel obligated to voice my opinion that it is this lack of preparation that, at least in part, keeps me as a devout listener. I find that spontaneous responses make his answers conclude some of his thought process, and it is that insight that I find of great value. Many of the questions he has answered thus far can be found, perhaps with some difficulty, in the books themselves, but it is Josh's thoughts on the matter that I find of more interest than the actual facts of the matter. To conclude my thoughts, I would encourage you to keep doing the things the way you have been doing all along.
Thank you.
We will. On to the questions. Is there a specific time you guys produced a show that we would know about to know when emails will arrive in time for the next batch of shows? He understands we record 2 at once. For the longest time, he was used to setting aside time on Tuesday morning, but then he found it wasn't available for me until Wednesday. So do we have a real schedule for release times? We release an episode every single week. Every Wednesday.
We record every other Wednesday. We record 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of like space out the post-production over the course of the subsequent like couple of weeks so that, and then we just kind of do it for week on week. Obviously, things might shift a little bit depending on like what's going on and stuff. Like, for example, if Gen Con were happening this year, that would probably mess with our recording schedule.
Yep.
It is, as of today's date, as of the recording of this episode, July 15th.
Yes.
We are recording the episodes that will release July 22nd and July 29th.
Mm-hmm.
Our next recording session will be 2 weeks from today, so the 29th.
Yes.
And,
as far as things work out right now.
Yeah. Obviously, so, like, as of right now, we're recording the odd and next even. So 35 and 36 we are recording tonight. This is episode 35. So any emails that get sent after now will not get done until the earliest episode 37, which would be the one released in August.
Yes.
That first week of August.
And to throw things off even more, we actually did one where we recorded only 1 episode because Josh and I were both way too tired, and then we shifted it to the next week again, and then we recorded 2. So we've thrown off our own schedule.
Yeah.
And occasionally, like family members' birthdays will happen on a Wednesday. We'll shift it to Thursday or something like that.
But for the most part, we record every other Wednesday night Eastern time or U.S. time.
Yeah.
And we record 2 episodes and then kind of release those over the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically how it works. But yeah, it's like we initially started doing just the 1 episode and realized, 1, we actually like doing this and don't mind like doing a little bit longer recording session. to release episodes more frequently so that we can actually get through all of the content that we want to. If we were still on the bi-weekly schedule that we had originally like started off with, we would
only
not
get
be
to like episode 20 right now instead of 35. So
yeah,
it's just because, as you said, it's a labor of love and your curiosity wants to be sated. We hope it's sated because we've been doing a weekly podcast release since January, early
February, something like that. I would need to go back.
Before COVID Nation happened.
Yeah.
Before COVID World came in. So on to the rest of Brandon's email, because that was only the first half, by the way. He'll be starting his first Earthdawn game very soon after a lot of preparation. His friends marked by the Pathfinder horrors will finally play a good system. Earthdawn.
Now.
That's his phrase, not mine.
I understand that, but I want to push back a little bit on the other system stuff. I like to like, people like other games. That's cool. Pathfinder is a perfectly. I have not really looked at second edition Pathfinder at all. Pathfinder's a fine game. I have played it. Dungeons and Dragons is a fine game. I played a lot of that. Not so much 5th edition, but I've played that. I have played so many different games over the years, and I've got like such an appreciation for tabletop RPGs as a genre, as a medium, as a thing, that you know, there are some bad games out there. There are some bad games out there. But for the most part, like, I do, like, it's a small enough community, especially once you start getting into like actual developers and whatnot. It is a small enough community that, you know, we sort of, you know, a bunch of us sort of know each other in passing or, you know, or whatnot. And while we are competitors, I don't really see us as being in competition so much with each other.
It's a friendly competition, if anything.
Like, I like seeing my acquaintances and friends come up with cool stuff, and I like to see it get out there, and I like to see them succeed. I think the fact that Opti's Minis game Kickstarter has started off so well is freaking awesome. And I can't wait to like get my copy, and like I know the guy who made this, you know, in the same way that like the people that I play the Earthdawn podcast game with, like they think it's cool, and like I am fans of these people, I am friends with these people, and so I want to see them succeed. I want to see them do well. It's a small pond, but I don't see any need to like try and push other people out of it. We're in one way, we are really in a golden age. In some respects, we are in a fantastic time in RPG space. The ease that some people have of being able to get their ideas to market, even if it's just as a sideline or whatever, is fantastic. Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast have their issues. We will not go into those here. If you want to find out more, it's out there to find out. It is, but Dungeons and Dragons is the 900-pound gorilla of the industry, and everybody else is basically fighting over the other like 10%. And of that 10%, like 6% of it is taken up by, you know, Onyx Path, former White Wolf. We're all just like, we all really enjoy, you know, we don't necessarily get along with everybody, but we all like it's creative thing. So no, I mean, jokingly saying, yes, they were marked by, you know, the Pathfinder horror and will be playing a good game. No, Pathfinder is a perfectly fine game. There is nothing really wrong with Pathfinder.
One of my regular players is a huge Pathfinder fan, and he is just as much a Pathfinder fan as he is an Earthdawn fan. He's finally said that the version of Pathfinder they play and 4th edition Earthdawn are equal in terms of perfectitude. For lack of a better word. Not his word, my word. But he loves the fact that both of them play perfectly for what they're designed and made to do. So, anyway.
So, sorry, we just got off on a digress because of his comment there. Anyway, he's got a game that he's starting up.
It's all right. Brandon, we love you. We'll keep going. He had one of his players over just to run through some generic combat encounters to get him used to the system. His wife watched, and it was clear she thought it was a very complicated and slow-moving thing. This only concerns him now because his friend has talked her into playing her first tabletop RPG, and he's afraid that the system of Earthdawn itself is very good at storytelling, but perhaps a bit overcomplicated when it comes to a lot of the mechanics. Does Josh have any input here? Fine, Brandon. I won't answer the question.
Oh, you can answer the question.
It took a lot of cajoling to get my wife to play MMOs on PC way back when we first met. She thought them very strange, but he got her to join him, and she put in almost 20 years of that, but his interest has waned. He would very much like it if she found the Earthdawn enjoyable, and he's sure that there's a market for a simplified rules set, of which he has great interest in working on himself. He's going to home rule some things. He's read Morgan's blog with things like simplified encumbrance and Josh's thoughts on simplifying weapons to just size and step number. While he thinks those are great ways of simplifying some trivial matters, he thinks some more drastic changes in an alternate set of rules would be very beneficial to the right audience of players. He should emphasize he does not mean replacement or new additions, just an alternate way of doing things.
So my first suggestion with new players to Earthdawn, whether they are new to RPGs in general or just new to Earthdawn. If you want to make things a little bit easier mechanically, use the optional rule where temporary modifiers, like the +2 bonus damage per success on attacks and things like that, have that be just a modifier to the roll rather than having modify the step. Because then what you've got at that point is the dice that they roll for their abilities don't change. Okay? Any of those sort of short-term or medium-term bonuses or penalties modify the result. That is something that players who are more familiar with things like D&D or Pathfinder or other like systems like that will be able to grasp pretty easily, and then it's just a matter of, I'm just rolling these dice and adding them together and then making the modifiers. That is the first thing that I would recommend if I'm running a table at a convention and I've got more new players than older. That's what I will do, and I'll typically do that anyway, just because it flows a little bit more quickly. If I've got experienced players who know what they're doing, I'll just tell them what the modifier is, and they'll have the chart and they'll look it up.
Go to town.
Now, admittedly, I think that part of the fun of Earthdawn is having those dice shifting back and forth and being able to bump up to better dice or go down to lower.
Totally.
I think that's a cool aspect of the system, but I think if you're introducing people brand new for the first time, keep it simpler by going with the modifiers. The other thing that you can do, especially if you're getting with people who are maybe newer to RPGs in the first place, is to de-emphasize the mechanics to a certain extent, or have your early adventures be focused a bit more on story and sort of introducing some of the concepts fairly easily, fairly slowly, generously, gradually.
Yeah, one at a time.
One of the nice things about Earthdawn is that at its base, the mechanics are unified. You're going to be, like, when you have to do something, you're going to be doing the same thing every time. That was one of the things that was kind of nice about the third edition and later iterations of Dungeons and Dragons, that everything was basically the D20 plus modifier. You want to roll high. Like, that was fairly standardized, whereas opposed to, well, you want to roll high on this, but you want to roll low on this, and these are do percentile and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so that's like a unified mechanical system is a good thing. But yeah, focus more on the story. Focus more on the role playing. Do not necessarily. I think a lot of people, especially who are coming to role playing new, can bring an energy and lack enthusiasm, but will lack expectations that people who have been gaming a while will bring to the table without realizing it. That there will be a lot of like assumed ways that things will work and that sort of thing. So story, role-playing, be kind of like, obviously you want to introduce the mechanics. You maybe want to be a little bit more, I was talking in the other show at some point in the last couple of weeks about if you have a small group, especially one that's maybe not combat heavy, of being a little bit more generous in the player's favor. One of the things that like, I talk a lot about session zeros and developing the characters as a group and things like that. When you've got a group that maybe not familiar with the setting or know what's going on, they don't have the knowledge to draw on to be able to build that really well. And so the game master would kind of maybe end up shouldering a lot more of the work.
Yeah.
In terms of that, sealed care scenario.
Fair.
Like one of the nice things is like you look at a discipline has 15 circles and like 30 odd talents plus defense bonuses and karma abilities, and then you get magicians with spells and like all of these options and different mechanics and all of this sort of stuff that can be imposing and upsetting and or not upsetting, but like discouraging to someone who might be bouncing off of that, overwhelming. But with first circle characters, with a brand new characters, you've got 6 talents that you have at first circle.
Yes.
Plus a couple of skills, because most of your skills are, knowing how to read and write, knowing how to speak a language.
Knowing how to do something arty.
Knowing how to do something arty. But like you've got 6 talents, one of which is thread weaving, which unless they're a magician, you don't even need to worry about that for them in terms of how that works in the game.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be something that comes up in the course of the adventure. And so one of the nice things about the way that the Earthdawn system progresses and characters develop is that you gradually add on little bits and pieces. If you haven't, look at the Quick Start Guide. That was written with the idea that people might be new to Earthdawn, and so simplified some things. It's still Earthdawn, but it simplified things to the point, it basically uses the modify the result option as read in it.
The only thing I've got to add otherwise is, as the game master, take out all of the combat options table. Take out all the modifiers. So don't let them be blindsided. Don't do cover. Don't do ranges. Don't do harried. Just keep your combat really, really simple. Here's your number to hit.
In terms of the mechanics.
In terms of mechanics. Just like first couple of combat scenarios, just say, okay, here's your target number to hit, fit their physical defense, or their spell defense, or their social defense. That's it. You hit it. There's the number. No modifiers. Just keep the dice as they are. After they get used to that, then you can...
Which might not take very long.
Which is not going to take very long. But if they get used to it and go, oh, this is pretty quick now. Great. Then you can slow it down and add in, well, now there's some cover modifiers. Maybe there's a darkness modifier. Maybe they're prone. They have been knocked down, which is a big thing. And so now you can work in the knocked down modifiers and show it how it benefits them to knock somebody down. Oh, yeah, now they're at -3. It's easier to hit them. You'll want to do this. You'll want to knock somebody down. Throw those in. And then you get to throw in things like the called shots and the defensive stance and the aggressive attack. And once you lace those in, like 4th and 5th combat...
I would modify that slightly.
Fair.
And I would say approach it from what's called the fiction first perspective, which is to say you want to have the roles and so forth like kind of helping determine how things go.
Yes, tell the story.
But you also want to, as part of like in the course of combat, rather than it just being an exercise of roll, oh, I hit, roll, oh, I do damage. Like having a narration, a description, like prompt the characters, like use your own, like when you are doing the opposition, when you're doing the NPCs, describe what they're doing. And hopefully that will prompt the players to kind of do the same thing. And if in the course of their description of what they want to do, they mention something that would result in a modifier, that's when you bring it up.
Yes.
Like that basically you use the descriptions of the action, you use that as the trigger for the modifier. And you don't even necessarily need to be, like you could make it even very much simpler and say, and use the same kind of like +2, -2 kind of thing that all of the mechanics go off of, so that there is a unified kind of idea there and kind of deal with that sort of thing. It's not technically rules as written, but if you're introducing somebody to it, especially if you're introducing somebody to gaming for the first time, that is something that I would suggest as an idea.
I have used that, but it was more natural than I didn't actually have to plan to think on doing so, because I tend to describe exactly what's happening during a combat anyway. And so I'm like, oh yeah, he fell down to his knees, so now he's knocked down, per se. You can get this modifier, but 9 times out of 10, everybody, when they're in their first or second combat, is like, I want to hit this guy square here. I want to hit him in the head. I want to shoot him in the leg. Well, that's a called shot. There are rules for that. Here we go. And I can explain it that way. And that usually works in exactly all those things. It's 9 times out of 10 with a called shot.
That's the that aspect of like hit locations is not really something that's built in. That's more of a, oh, you rolled really well. Well, let's narrate the results of that as, oh, like you rolled a high attack, you got a high damage. Well, you right in his neck.
Totally.
You know,
severed the head from the body.
That, like you've got to kind of balance that trade-off there.
Yeah. So thank you, Brandon. We love hearing from you and or Kagorsi, because I'm pretty sure this is the same guy. But otherwise,
we have gone on.
We did. We went on. But 45 minutes into this whole thing, we absolutely love making your Tuesday and Wednesday. We will keep up the good work because, again, Josh and I like doing this with each other, so we're good to go from there. So
good questions, good emails. We like them. We like getting them. If you want to have your question answered, or if you want to prompt some kind of rambling discourse on not just Earthdawn, but general like game theory and anything else like that, movies, please send us an email, edsgpodcast@gmail.com.
By all means.
You know, it might be a couple of weeks from when you send it in before we answer your question and you hear it on the show, but we do try and get to like each batch of emails in our recording sessions.
Yeah. So if you have something long and rambling, we'll like to hear that as well. But otherwise, Josh has plenty of social media applications you can find him on for quick answers, but we like doing this as well. Otherwise, on to trolls.
On the trolls, we'll kind of need to get this one a little bit, you know, we probably won't go too long. Trolls are awesome. Enough said.
Yeah. And done. No, just kidding. Done. No, trolls are a wonderfully complex race in Earthdawn that you can play, which is more than it first it seems, because, again, the creators designed each and every one of the races to be more complex than people assume, and they took the idea of trolls and tweaked them a little bit for the Earthdawn, which is what we like them for, because trolls in their own tongue are known as the dual people, the Trua Aul, and they have an honor to them and a spirituality to them, which most people would not assume from something that's, 9 feet tall, 8.5 feet tall, weighs 500 pounds, and can crush you like a grape. So they added a whole lot of familial connection into them, and the representation of trolls in Earthdawn, as I said, breaks down into two main things that we're focused on: the duality of their nature. Either they're pretty violent or can be quick-tempered, and they also have long periods of contemplation, or they have a furious nature about them, but also an absolutely passionate joy about them as well. So there's not a lot of gray area in trolls. It's kind of measures of extremes that I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is a little bit of the orc as well. When we talked about orcs, we talked about sort of the
ferocity,
the ferocity and the desire to seize life and grab it.
Absolutely.
Trolls are a little bit different in that regard, in some regards from that, but
they're more trolls in the moment. They find their joy either in the contemplation of a quiet thing or in the fervor of a rambunctious thing, and so they literally, trolls more than most live in the moment. They're not always seeking violence, they're not always seeking contemplation, but whatever they're into wholeheartedly, and it's entirely
the trolls, I think, are shaped philosophically by their traditional environment, which is to say the mountain peaks and the highlands.
Yeah.
While the stereotypical troll, the iconic sort of troll image from Earthdawn are the Crystal Raiders.
Yes.
Sort of the largest single population center of trolls in the province. I think that the trolls as a people were largely shaped by that environment where you have the difficulty of surviving on, in a difficult.
It's a hard scrabble existence.
It can be a hard scrabble existence when you're living on the higher peaks and needing to just find enough food to survive, especially when you are 8.5 feet tall and 500 pounds and probably have a little bit of a higher calorie requirement than somebody else.
So those are lean and hardy people.
But those, so there's a very, sort of stark, but also very beautiful aspect to it. I mean, you live in Colorado.
Yes. That's half mountains. Literally.
Yeah.
Half.
Yeah.
The western half is all mountains.
I have been to Colorado. It was many, many years ago, but I like that kind of, like strong natural wilderness. Like there is that contemplation, that sort of inner peace that can come about when you are faced with the sheer scope of a vista,
the
that
grandeur
you don't
of nature.
get. Yeah, the grandeur, the kind of thing that you don't get in
the open plains,
in the cities,
in the cities,
New England. I mean, I live in Maine, where we still have a lot of like sort of wild area and whatnot. But like you get down into like suburban Boston and Connecticut and New York, and there are but like outside of cities, that just there is that. Like that aspect of things is, I think, strongly influenced on sort of troll culture, even if it's not something that is necessarily the case for, say, lowland trolls who might live among other name givers in cities and whatnot. Yeah. But I think a large part of trolls in general, and particularly the Highland troll culture, which is sort of the default for Barsave, is really strongly defined by that existence in the mountains.
Yes. I agree. So their spirituality is called, in the troll tongue, Jar Arak, and it is the balance between frenetic activity and striving to become all they can become, and the calm activity, which has, again, striving to become all you can become, is basically is their oneness with the world in whatever situation they happen to find themselves in. So if it's drinking and revelry, they will throw themselves wholeheartedly into that. If it's calm contemplation, they will throw themselves wholeheartedly into that as well. So, as I said, it's not necessarily a mood swing type thing, but they only live slightly longer than orcs. And so they have that, to your point, that fervor to grasp life by the horns and shake it, because they're a parent at like 15 or 20 and a grandparent by 35 or 40. And then, they don't have long to go after that. So their lineage is as short-lived almost as an orc's. They're one of the shorter-lived races.
Sure. And
that's a natural life, not just because they all die in battle. So
yeah. I'm trying to figure out how best to put the difference between the orc philosophy and the troll philosophy in that regard, because they are similar, but there are some differences in them. Like I feel like the underlying motivation, the underlying psychological motivation, which obviously can vary from individual to individual, but that kind of defines them culturally, even though they are both very like maybe seize the moment, live in the now kind of attitude. I think the reason for that is very different. It
bears a distinction, yes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, like I'm trying to think of how best to express that, and it seems like it's very that probably relates to the orcs' historical, cultural legacy of being slaves, and how they like rose up and took that.
Yes.
And the desire to then sort of continue to like every day to
prove
wake
themselves
up and take that freedom and take that moment.
I agree.
As opposed to the troll, where I think part of that is if you don't go out and dedicate yourself completely, again, looking at the hardscrabble like mountain existence of the Highland trolls, that if you don't go out and fully throw yourself into a raid or a hunt or whatever task that you need to do, you may die.
Yes.
But at the same time, and once that has been accomplished, then you can be at peace. You can
find the joy in the contemplation of the thing you just achieved, and you are also as contemplative as the mountain you exist on, because that is
there's sort of a
that is your mother.
I think what I would say is that probably that the troll philosophy is maybe more fatalistic in the sense that you need to go out and you need to throw yourself into whatever task you need to do to survive, and that you kind of need to do that day after day, but that the presence of the grandeur of nature and the recognition that the mountains will continue to be here after I am gone.
Yes.
That, the world is like, it is that sort of recognition of one's place in the universe.
Yes.
I think that's where I think it comes down to, is that I think in large part the troll's philosophy on things is like, I need to go out and struggle and succeed every day in order to keep surviving. But that is just my role in this greater dance of the cosmos. Mm-hmm. And it is like all part of that. And I can, like, when it is appropriate, I can take that quiet moment and reflect on that and recognize my place. And that it is my place and this is appropriate and this is how it should be. Whereas yes. I think the orcs, that theirs is not so much of I need to go out and survive, but this is my place. It's very much like, we're getting away with something. Like our place was to be slaves, but we didn't want that. So we're taking something else and flip the boonda to the universe that,
we're taking it back.
Well, not even taking it back. It's like, we're taking it. This is ours. And yes. Screw anybody that wants to tell us otherwise.
Yeah. Doesn't think we can do this.
I think there's like, it is again, like a very, like, doing similar things, but the underlying philosophy of them is very different.
I agree.
And again, that may vary from individual to individual, but talking here like broad stereotypes of these cultures, like that's probably where I see the difference, is that the trolls recognize their place in the grand scheme of things and are comfortable with that role. Whereas the orcs were...
And maybe have less to prove.
Yeah, that the orcs were, we didn't like that place, we're taking something else, and, like, screw what the...
And we're proving everybody wrong who thinks we can't do it.
Yeah. And, yeah.
Or who doesn't want us to do it.
And, that is one way to look at it. That is not the only...
No, it's fair. I appreciate the insights. I knew there was a similarity to their passions, not the deities, to their passionate way of life, but there, as I said, needed to be a distinction made between the two, because people are just like, oh, trolls are just orcs with horns. No, they're not. They have a completely different family makeup. They have a completely different pride makeup. Their honor and their pride is based upon three things. They have a personal pride, a clan pride, which is family, and a racial honor. And that is the Kator, the Katral, and the Katera. And it is littered throughout the entire troll essay in the Nations of Barsay Volume 2. And if you insult a troll, you might not know, or if you talk to a troll, you might not know you've insulted either their personal honor, their clan honor, or their racial honor. So you need to be careful how you talk to a troll.
Now, in fairness, again, that is something that is largely the focus and concern of the Highland trolls, especially the Crystal Raiders. Mm-hmm. And when I kind of wrote the troll section in 4th edition.
Yeah.
In the player's guide and in the GM's guide, in the little section about trolls that's in the bar save, is to, say lowland trolls also are concerned with honor, but because they, again, looking at the sort of monoculture of the Crystal Raiders versus trolls elsewhere in bar save. The Crystal Raiders are only dealing with other Crystal Raiders who all have very similar ideas on honor and how the world is supposed to work. Whereas somebody like, a troll merchant in Travar is among other people. And while they may have, they will very likely have their own definitions of honor. Yes. Their recognition of how that works in a more diverse society is going to have you're probably still going to see, you could absolutely see like lowland trolls who kind of like go back to their roots and maybe be a little bit more trigger happy when it comes to that.
Yes. Slightly more impulsive.
But yeah, like the idea, when you are creating a troll character, the idea of honor, because I play one, the idea of honor and what your character considers honorable and whatnot, again, kind of looking a little bit like the Orc Gahad and trying, like, defining the things that will trigger that is a similar kind of, like, character and role-playing decision. What does your character consider honorable? What is their, like, Virag doesn't really have a huge concept of racial honor. You know, and is like, I would think that the lowland trolls in general probably tend to focus much more on personal honor a lot more than the highland trolls or crystal raiders, who would tend to likely focus more on, depending on the interaction, clan honor or racial honor.
Yes.
But I think that at least for Virag, to speak about her, the honor sort of comes from, like, she has sort of ended up in the role that she is in that adventuring group, sort of as the leader / den mother after a fashion. And having been entrusted with that, honoring that trust and behaving appropriately and caring for these people who are, in a sense, her current family is a very strong thing, which is sometimes difficult to deal with. And actually, in an episode coming up here of that show in a couple of weeks, we will see... her honor gets
impinged.
It gets impinged, not in the way that I think anybody expects, but it does make itself known.
Good.
Yeah. So that is something to consider. You know, again, always wanting to keep in mind, like we've talked about with the Windling, like we talked about to a lesser extent, maybe with the Orcs.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got a stereotype, when you've got stuff kind of talking about any of the name givers that could potentially be a disruptive aspect of play, like where you're using it to be a jerk and to reduce others' fun.
Yes.
Or, you know, to have fun at the expense of your fellow players. There is a difference between someone who is playing an honor-focused Highland troll who has something of a hair trigger.
Yes.
That is doing that, and like his fellow adventurers, the other characters, might find that frustrating and annoying in the story, as long as the other players are having a good time with it. Like, that's sort of the balance in where you should be adults. You should be communicating with each other. You should be keeping an eye out for those cues and clues that other people might not be enjoying things. There is a certain amount of peer pressure that can go along if one person is uncomfortable, but everybody else seems to be having a good time with it, that the person who is uncomfortable might not want to speak up for fear of ruining the good time. So, you know, again, like troll honor, like flighty, curious prankster windlings, like hair trigger Gahad on orcs. All of those sorts of things can be great character bits. They can be great things to role play out and to throw twists or wrenches or complications into the ongoing narrative that you're creating at the table, as long as you are not doing so necessarily at the expense of your fellow players. You should be doing it to entertain each other, to have a good time, to pass the ball back and forth, to kind of take an improv term there, but not going... Yeah.
Have fun with it. Don't make it a cudgel.
Yeah.
Little things can set you off, but if everything sets you off, you're just being a jackass. So the thing about trolls otherwise is, of course, they have their own rituals with birth, death, names, and so forth, and we'll get to those here quickly. So the birthing ritual, men are not allowed in the room. It insults the mother of the child that they are not strong enough to go through this by themselves. And so they symbolically have to fight their way in after the baby is born to prove that the family is the most important thing, and he will fight for his family no matter what. But in the meantime, he drinks something called hard sage to cause his own stomach pain to be in solidarity with the mother of his child, so that he can go through that pain as well. So they're very simpatico that way. However, he does become his wife's servant for the next 2 months, just waiting on her hand and foot, fulfilling every desire. So there you are. Trolls do that. They have two names. Actually, they have 3 names: 2 personal names and a clan name. And the clan name is spoken first, if at all, to other trolls, but not usually to any other race, because they don't typically
get it.
The other races are going to go, that doesn't mean anything to me at all anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But they are not named until the first full moon after the baby is born, and it is when the only ritual that they can define, as all trolls do this, Highland, Lowland, no matter what, is there is a horn sounded at the beginning of sundown. As soon as the sun is completely set, the naming ritual begins, and it depends upon the family, the clan, the whole 9 yards. It's all secretive and unique and very, very, very cool. And then they keep those 2 names until about the age of 11, which is the age of passage. And if they honor their family enough, they will keep both of those names. But if they want to completely change who they are, they will take on 2 new names and the clan name and move on from there. So all kinds of fun things about that. In marriage, females pay court to the males and make the proposals. So it's completely gender equal as far as that's concerned. So they flip the script on the gender equality so females actually court the males and make all the proposals for marriage. So,
and the Highland trolls practiced line marriage.
Yes. I was hoping you were going to get to that.
Which is basically a sort of polyamorous type of situation. And that is something that is taken, I believe, from actual historical cultures. It is not something I've actually looked into. But now that I mention it, I think it is something that has come up before.
Yes, it's to keep the clan name or traditions alive. Yeah, for trolls, at least.
I'm flipping over to Google.
So while Josh does that, trolls have a different view on death. They really don't think that it's a celebration. They don't look at it as a missed opportunity. They just look at death as, well, it comes for everybody. What did you do while you were alive? And so they look at death as a very long sleep after a lot of toil for your life. It is welcome. It is a respite. And they look forward to it in old age or in battle. They don't have one that I have to die in battle or live a bad life. No, they can live a long, productive life and die at the end at a very old age, and they're quite happy with that. Or they can die in battle because it was glorious and what Thistonius wanted them to do. So,
I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Okay.
Fair enough. No worries. Otherwise, we should probably get to the stats.
Yes. Trolls.
And see what it means to be a troll.
Trolls, I love troll stats. Trolls.
There's not a lot not to like.
Yeah, like, I really like trolls. They're
why,
probably...
again, you play a troll nethermancer, so yes.
They are well suited to a bunch of stuff. They have standard base 10 dexterity. They've got base 14 strength, which is second only to obsidian and slightly higher than orcs. They've got a base 12 toughness, which is on par with dwarves and second only to obsidian. Yep. They have a -1 penalty to their perception. So, not ideal for a magician, but that's not bad.
It's not.
They get an 11 willpower and effective +1 bonus to their willpower, which kind of makes up on the other side of the perception for magicians. And then a base 10 charisma, and they have a move of 14. Because they're big and they've got big strides, their movement is equal to an elf. The only drawback is that basically all of those bonuses mean that they only have a karma modifier of 3. So they do not have a whole lot of karma.
No. They rely on skill and everything else.
Yeah, like...
skill and talent.
Certainly trolls are incredibly well suited to be combat types. Warriors. They make decent swordmasters as well.
Great weaponsmiths.
Really good weaponsmiths. You know, again, that minor perception hit, it's, not ideal for a weaponsmith, but it's not bad. Spellcasters, they can be perfectly well. The advantage of their natural strength and toughness bonuses means that they don't need to, if they're going to be playing someone who is maybe not quite so martially inclined, that they don't need to put so many points into those to have them be at a decent level and can have extra points to put into their perception.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, all around, trolls make really, really good Sky Raiders, Warriors, Swordmasters. Troll Beastmaster actually is...
I'm running a Troll Beastmaster in my midweek campaign right now.
Troll
awesome.
Beastmaster, Troll Beastmaster is great. Magicians are not... Trolls tend to go towards Elementalist, although you can very easily have any other magician type, clearly. But just culturally, trolls tend to lean towards magicians more, especially in the Elementalists more as the magician, especially in the Highlands, because they're the ones who have the ability to enchant and work with the materials that allow them to repair and build the airships that they use.
Yeah.
They tend towards Sky Raider more than Air Sailor. A troll archer is a frightening thing. It
is.
Trolls don't culturally tend towards being thieves, just because the trolls tend to be a lot more traditional Highland Troll society is not inclined, like they would not view the skulking and sneaking and hiding to be particularly honorable, and are much more of the Sky Raider, like, I will club you over the head and take what I want kind of attitude.
Yep.
But yeah, like, just about, you can pretty easily, they make decent troubadours. But basically, yeah, just about any discipline. I mean, there are few disciplines that really are not suited to any of the races if you're willing to make it work. But the trolls, like, if you want to play a big character, Obsidian is tougher to make work because of the way that their stats are distributed. And it's a lot easier to kind of make that work with trolls. You do have the potential, you do have the downside of not having a lot of karma, but that's not a huge problem. You do also have the increased cost of, like, armor, because you've got to buy larger suits of armor, so there's a little bit of a surcharge there. So you've got that. That's not a huge problem in the grand scheme of things.
That's not too prohibitive. No.
You know, you also need to, like, just in general, like, the world is not built for you. Like, most,
you need to duck through a lot of
doors, like most furniture and things like that. You know, you tend to rather than sitting in nice chairs, you will be sitting on, you know, like sturdy stools and benches, things like that.
My towns have a lot of tree stumps.
But no, trolls are great. They are, like, there's some really cool role-playing opportunities. Just playing a big character like that is fantastic. I depending on my mood, I am either a Tiskrang or a troll. Like, those are my go-tos. I mean, I can play any of them. I love them all.
Oh, I do as well. Trolls are actually one of the few I have not actually made a character for just yet, because I had forgotten all of the role-playing aspects we just talked about in the last 20-30 minutes. But my weekend campaign, my friend plays a troll archer, and he is badass. And then in my weekday campaign that I'm running a troll Beastmaster. And so I've become very familiar with them all over again. And so, yeah, they are wonderful to behold in what they're doing. And once the players actually hear this episode, they can remember, oh yeah, this is what trolls are about. So, no, they're fantastic. My go-tos are always Tiskrang and Obsidian as my first two choices. And then I kind of branch out from there, maybe if I have a different idea. But Obsidian is episode 40, so we'll get to them soon. I agree. Trolls are awesome, and I especially like Earthdawn trolls because they have developed a personality and honor and spirituality and a society behind them for Earthdawn. So if you want to take aspects of them and say, yeah, I'm going to hold on to that one, the personal honor, and use that, great. You want to use your clan honor, go. If you want to just use part of the story that we gave you here about how the kids are born and how they view death, fine. Yeah. Pick and choose. There's plenty to work with in this mirepoix of troll customs in Earthdawn. And we didn't even cover the second half of the essay. So yeah, there's plenty to read from. So that is an hour and 15 or so of email questions and trolls.
We've gone on. No, this is a good episode. Good.
It's not our longest. It's not our longest episode. It might be, but we're done. But
so yeah, we will kind of wrap this up quickly because we've still got another episode to record tonight.
Yeah, there's that. So, where can people find you on all the social media platforms? And then we'll
Twitter at Metaxas. You can subscribe specifically to the show on Twitter at EarthdawnG. I am available on Facebook. There is the Earthdawn Guild on Facebook. There is the FASA Discord. There are the FASA Games forums. All of the stuff. Yeah. The links to all of those are in the various show notes. Send us email, edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Check out the Empty Thrones Kickstarter. Check out Frag and Unicorn Games' Gangs of the Undercity.
And go buy from Artisan Dice.
Go buy from Artisan Dice. Enjoy stuff. Have a good time.
Yes, and if you can't find us,
we recognize that things are as they are here in this year of our
COVID world.
Year of our disaster 2020, our trundling garbage fire, our Buick, our convertible Buick hurtling towards a cliff as the police are pursuing us, and let us hope that unlike Thelma and Louise, we do not go plunging off of the end with our hands held high. And just, take a moment to reflect in the grandeur. If you can, get out into nature, out into the world,
yes.
and, just relax and depressurize and try and do what you can to alleviate the stress that everybody is under. And whether that is by getting around a table with your friends, either in person safely or virtually, play some games,
yes.
throw some dice, real or computerized.
Stress relief.
Do what you can. We're all doing what we can. And we appreciate you, and we care about you, and we hope you are doing well.
And as Garland is our witness, we will make it to 2021. So on that note, folks, it is time for you to go make your own troll legend.
With honor. Good night, everybody.
For the 80% who are still listening. Good night.